The unveiled secret, ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be captivated. Today, we invite you to immerse yourselves in The Unveiled Secret, a tale of love, loss, and destiny. Meet Lucas, a man building an empire, haunted by a past love, Ilara, a woman whose gentle soul hid a profound secret. After a sudden separation, their lives diverged, only for fate to orchestrate a shocking reunion 5 years later. Lucas is on the verge of marrying another when Ilara reappears, shattering his carefully constructed world. What dark truth did Ilara conceal? Can a love lost in time ever truly be rekindled? Tune in, and before you do, remember to hit that subscribe button. The digital clock on Lucas's bedside table glared 2:17 a.m. Another restless night, another ghostly whisper of a name he hadn't dared utter aloud in half a decade. Ilara. The name tasted like ash and burnt sugar on his tongue. A bittersweet memory that often felt more real than the polished steel and glass of his thriving tech empire. 5 years. 5 years since the last time he'd seen her, since the world had cleaved them apart, leaving him adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, the expensive silk pajamas a stark contrast to the faded, threadbare t-shirt he'd worn in the small, cramped apartment when he first met her. That was a lifetime ago, a different Lucas. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, overlooking the glittering cityscape. A million lights, each a story, none as haunting as his own. His reflection, sharp and formidable, stared back, a stranger in a tailored suit. He was Lucas Thorne now, CEO of Synapse Innovations, a name whispered with respect in boardrooms across the continent. But beneath the veneer of success, a raw, unhealed wound festered, a silent testament to a love that had bloomed amidst chaos and vanished without a trace. The city pulsed below him, a symphony of ambition and loneliness. He remembered a time when he'd looked at it with different eyes, eyes that sparkled with naive hope, eyes that Ilara had taught to truly see. It was an accidental collision, literally, that first brought them together. Not in a high-rise office, but in the chaotic, vibrant heart of a local art fair. Lucas, then a struggling app developer, had been so engrossed in his nascent financial management application, FinFlow, that he'd bumped squarely into a woman carrying an oversized canvas. Paint splattered, brushes clattered, and a vibrant streak of cadmium yellow marred his crisp white shirt. He braced for an angry retort, but instead a soft, melodic laugh floated up. Ilara. She knelt amidst the colorful chaos, her hands, surprisingly nimble despite the artistic mess, gathering her fallen treasures. Her hair, the color of rich mahogany, fell in soft waves around a face framed by delicate features. But it was her eyes that truly captivated him, large, luminous pools of deep emerald, sparkling with an intelligence and a subtle melancholy he couldn't quite decipher. There was a fragile strength about her, like a willow tree bending in a storm, resilient, yet ethereal. "Oh dear," she'd murmured, her voice a soothing balm. "Looks like my abstract expressionism just found a new canvas. My apologies." That unexpected humor disarmed him completely. He found himself smiling, a genuine smile that felt foreign to his usually stressed demeanor. He learned she was an aspiring artist, working part-time at a small independent gallery to make ends meet. Her studio, a cluttered sanctuary filled with vibrant colors and half-finished masterpieces, became his escape. He was a creature of logic and algorithms. She was a whirlwind of intuition and emotion. He saw the world in numbers. She saw it in hues and brushstrokes. It was a stark contrast that, paradoxically, created a perfect harmony. Lucas, for all his intellectual brilliance, was a fledgling in the brutal world of startups. His FinFlow app, while innovative, was languishing, starved of investment and direction. He often felt like a lone ship navigating a storm, without a compass. It was Ilara who became his unexpected North Star. She listened, truly listened, to his endless monologues about algorithms and user interfaces. Her insights, surprisingly astute for someone outside the tech world, often cut through his analytical knots. "Lucas," she'd once said, her voice soft but firm, Your app isn't just about numbers. It's about empowering people, about giving them control over their dreams. Show them the dream, not just the spreadsheet. She became his muse, his confidant, his quiet strength. She didn't just offer emotional support, she rolled up her sleeves. She'd spend countless nights with him, poring over pitch decks, her artistic eye instinctively pointing out flaws in presentation. She even leveraged her small network in the local art community, surprisingly well-connected individuals, to introduce him to potential investors, subtly vouching for his character and vision. Her unwavering belief in him, a belief so pure, it felt like a tangible force, was the fuel that kept him going when self-doubt threatened to consume him. He remembered one particularly bleak night, after a failed pitch, when he was ready to throw in the towel. Ilara had simply taken his hand, her touch cool and reassuring, and said, "The greatest masterpieces are born from countless discarded sketches, Lucas. Your vision is a masterpiece in the making." Her words were a lifeline, pulling him back from the brink of despair. Their love wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a quiet, relentless current, deepening with every shared laugh, every late-night conversation, every challenge they faced together. Lucas found himself drawn to her profound empathy, her unwavering kindness, and the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. He saw a soul that shimmered with an inner light, a rare and precious gem. They talked about forever, about a small house with a garden, about waking up to the smell of coffee and paint. He had never felt so utterly, completely seen. He believed she was his anchor, the one constant in a tumultuous world. Yet, amidst the vibrant tapestry of their love, a faint, dissonant note always lingered. There were moments, fleeting glimpses, when a shadow would cross Ilara's eyes, a flicker of fear, a hint of sadness, swiftly veiled by her usual serene composure. She would sometimes become withdrawn, her gaze distant, as if grappling with an unseen burden. Lucas, too consumed by their budding romance and his own struggles, dismissed them as artistic temperament or fleeting anxieties. He never pressed, respecting her privacy, blinded by the sheer brilliance of their connection. He loved her fiercely, completely, unaware that the woman who had brought so much light into his life carried a secret that had the power to plunge them both into an abyss. Their world, painted in vibrant hues of hope and promise, was unknowingly poised on the edge of a precipice, waiting for the inevitable crack that would shatter its fragile beauty. The sound of the siren was a cruel, tearing shriek that ripped through the usually serene evening. It began as a distant wail, a barely audible sorrow, but rapidly swelled into a deafening roar, mirroring the chaos that exploded around Lucas. One moment, he and Ilara were strolling hand in hand through the lively, neon-lit streets of the art district, discussing potential names for their future dog. A silly, sweet argument that brought genuine laughter. The next, a blinding flash, a deafening crunch of metal, and the world spun into a maelstrom of screaming tires and shattered glass. Lucas remembered the impact as a visceral shock, like being struck by a phantom wave. He'd instinctively thrown himself in front of Ilara, his body a fragile shield against the sudden, brutal invasion of chaos. Pain exploded in his side, a searing fire that stole his breath, but it was Ilara's scream, sharp and primal, that truly pierced him. He fell, a heavy, lifeless weight, the vibrant streetlights blurring into streaks of crimson and gold. When he struggled to push himself up, his head swimming in a murky fog, she was gone. The crowds, initially stunned, had erupted into a frenzied panic, a tide of humanity surging around the wreckage. He called her name, his voice a hoarse, ragged whisper, but it was swallowed by the clamor. It was as if she had simply dissolved into the startled night, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her lavender perfume and the chilling void where her hand had been. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Lucas's physical wounds healed, leaving behind an angry, jagged scar on his ribs, a constant fiery reminder of that night. But the wounds to his soul festered, deep and unyielding. He scoured every hospital, every police report, every news bulletin. He plastered her face on missing persons posters, his fingers trembling as he taped them to lamp posts, each one a desperate plea cast into the indifferent urban wilderness. He haunted her small studio apartment, its door now locked and silent, a tomb of forgotten dreams. Her landlord, a stern woman with weary eyes, had only shrugged. She left in a hurry, didn't say where. Just gone. Even the police, after initial investigations, had offered little solace. No foul play suspected, sir. Could be anything. People vanish. Vanish. The word was a poisoned dart, striking him repeatedly. How could someone so vibrant, so utterly real, simply vanish? His once bright world became a muted canvas, devoid of color. The joy that Alara had woven into his life had unraveled, leaving behind a stark, gray thread of existence. His startup, FinFlow, once a shared dream fueled by her belief, became a hollow obsession. It was the only thing he had left, a desperate tether to a future they had planned. He poured every waking hour, every ounce of his fractured being, into it. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford, dreams a torment he couldn't escape. His apartment, once filled with Ilara's whimsical sketches and the scent of her paints, now echoed with the sterile hum of servers and the frantic click of his keyboard. His once keen mind, usually a labyrinth of creative algorithms, transformed into a relentless, unforgiving machine. He worked with a singular driving purpose, to build something so monumental, so unignorable, that Alara, wherever she was, would eventually hear of it. It was a desperate, almost childlike hope, a beacon he hoped would guide her back. Yet, even as he chased success with the ferocity of a starving wolf, a part of him remained trapped in that chaotic night. He'd often find himself staring blankly at his computer screen, the complex lines of code blurring into the image of her face. He'd walk past art galleries, and the sight of a vibrant canvas would send a searing bolt of pain through him, a stark reminder of her absence. The contrast between his outwardly soaring career and his inwardly crumbling spirit was stark, a public triumph masking a private tragedy. He was building a kingdom, brick by agonizing brick, but it felt like a kingdom built on sand, constantly, threatening to crumble without her foundation. Meanwhile, Alara's world had fractured in a different, perhaps more insidious, way. The impact of the accident, combined with a pre-existing, undiagnosed condition, had exacerbated a rare, aggressive form of bone marrow cancer. It wasn't just a bump and bruises. The sudden trauma had triggered a rapid deterioration, forcing her into an agonizing choice. She had been rushed to a specialized medical facility abroad, arranged in utmost secrecy by a distant, estranged relative with a shadowy past in medical research. A relative she had never spoken of to Lucas, AI, linked to a part of her life she had deliberately kept hidden. This relative, Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to Lucas, a cruel twist of fate, was a brilliant but ethically dubious geneticist who offered Alara a radical, experimental treatment as her only hope. Alara remembered the blinding pain, the confused shouts, Lucas's frantic cries for her name. She had seen him fall, a sickening thud, and a wave of terror had washed over her. But before she could reach him, before she could even utter a coherent word, she had been bundled into a waiting, unmarked car by two stern-faced individuals. They weren't kidnappers in the traditional sense, but rather agents of her relative, ensuring she reached the clandestine clinic without delay. She had screamed Lucas's name, her voice raw, but it was lost in the chaos. Her phone, clutched in her hand, had been immediately confiscated, leaving her utterly cut off. The experimental treatment was brutal, a relentless assault on her body. That left her weak, disoriented, and utterly isolated. Days blurred into a haze of sterile white rooms, the incessant beeping of medical machinery, and the distant, detached voices of doctors. The longing for Lucas was a physical ache, a constant companion in her suffering. She tried to escape, to contact him, but she was under strict, almost prison-like surveillance by Eris's team. They argued it was for her own good to ensure the success of the fragile treatment, but to Alara, it felt like a gilded cage, she saw news of Lucas's rising star. Small mentions in business journals, then larger features until his name became synonymous with innovation. Each article was a double-edged sword, relief that he was alive and thriving, but also a crushing weight of despair. How could she, a ghost from his past, reappear and potentially derail the magnificent future he was building? The secret of her illness, once a quiet fear, had become a monstrous, impenetrable wall between them. For Lucas, the world had become a relentless pursuit of more deals, more patents, more market share. He built a team of brilliant minds, forging them into a formidable force. His office, once a simple desk and a laptop, expanded into a sprawling complex with sweeping views of the city. He wore success like a second skin, a polished armor that deflected the pain of his past. Yet, in the quiet moments, in the solitary expanse of his penthouse, the armor would crack, revealing the haunted man beneath. He'd stand by the window, gazing at the distant lights, each one a silent question mark. "Where are you, Alara? Are you alive? Do you remember me?" His friends, concerned by his monastic devotion to work, occasionally tried to set him up, urging him to move on. He'd politely decline, citing his workload, but the truth was, no one measured up. No one possessed Ilara's quiet grace, her incandescent spirit, her ability to make him feel truly seen. He was a king in his own right, but he ruled over an empty throne, perpetually waiting for a queen who might never return. The city, once a canvas for their shared dreams, had become a monument to his solitary ambition, its vibrant pulse a mocking echo of a love lost in the unforgiving currents of fate. One late evening, an anonymous email landed in his inbox. It contained only 2 words and a link. "She's alive," linked to a medical article about experimental cancer treatments. His heart, long dormant, jolted awake. He clicked the link, his fingers trembling. It was an academic paper, dense with medical jargon, discussing a rare experimental treatment for a specific type of cancer, pioneered by a Dr. Aris Thorne. A photograph, small and blurry, accompanied the article, a woman with a familiar, ethereal quality. It wasn't a clear picture of Ilara, but the tilt of her head, the graceful line of her neck. It sent a jolt of ice through him. Could it be? The email was untraceable. The article was years old. Was this a cruel hoax, or a whisper of truth from the grave? The unanswered question hung in the air, a phantom limb he could almost feel. He printed the article, clutching it like a sacred relic. The faint scent of old paper, a faint echo of the past, igniting a fragile spark of hope in the vast emptiness of his success. 5 years had sculpted Lucas Thorne into a man forged in the crucible of ambition and loss. The lean, slightly naive developer was gone, replaced by a titan of industry. His suits, once an afterthought, now bespoke symbols of his power. His penthouse, a glass fortress suspended above the city, was a stark monument to his solitary triumph. Yet, the anonymous email, clutched in his hand, felt like a single fragile feather, disturbing the carefully balanced ecosystem of his new life. "She's alive." The words echoed in the cavernous silence of his living room, a ghost's whisper against the hum of his automated home. The article about experimental cancer treatments, particularly the mention of Dr. Aris Thorne's ethically ambiguous work, sent shivers down his spine. It was a thread, impossibly thin, stretching across the abyss of the past 5 years. He wanted to pull it to unravel the mystery, but a new life, a new commitment, held him fast. The email had arrived months ago. For a time, it had consumed him, an ember glowing in the ashes of his buried hope. He'd made discreet inquiries, leveraging his vast network to dig deeper into Dr. Aris Thorne. The information he found was unsettling. A brilliant but reclusive geneticist known for pioneering controversial cutting-edge therapies in a highly secretive, off-the-grid facility. No patient names were ever disclosed. The trail went cold, fading into whispers and rumors. The lack of concrete evidence, combined with the growing weight of his present life, slowly dulled the edge of his desperate hope. The fire of Ilara's memory still burned, but it had retreated to a hidden chamber within his heart, a sacred flame, guarded by the formidable walls of his ambition. His company, Synapse Innovations, was a runaway success. FinFlow, once a dream, was now a global phenomenon, its clean interface and powerful algorithms revolutionizing personal finance. Lucas was at its helm, a visionary leader whose every move was scrutinized, whose every success amplified. But success, he found, was a gilded cage. It offered comfort, power, and prestige, but also a suffocating isolation. The throngs of admirers, the endless meetings, the glittering galas. None of it could fill the void left by Ilara's absence. He was surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. The laughter at his lavish parties seemed to mock the hollowness in his chest. It was during one such lavish charity gala, a glittering affair benefiting urban youth arts programs, a poignant, painful irony given Ilara's passion, that he truly saw Sophia. She was a vision in a sapphire gown, her raven hair cascading over one shoulder, her eyes, the color of warm amber, alight with genuine interest as she spoke to a young artist about his sculpture. Sophia Beaumont was the quintessential success story, a brilliant corporate lawyer, sharp as a diamond, elegant as a swan. She moved through the room with an innate grace, a quiet confidence that was both alluring and reassuring. Unlike the eager socialites who flocked to Lucas like moths to a flame, Sophia approached him not with fawning admiration but with a respectful, intelligent curiosity. Their initial conversations were purely professional, centered on a potential legal partnership for Synapse Innovations. But as they worked together, Lucas found himself increasingly drawn to her. Sophia was not Ilara. She didn't possess Ilara's bohemian spirit or her melancholic artistic depths. Sophia was grounded, pragmatic, and fiercely intelligent. She navigated the intricate labyrinth of corporate law with the same precision Lucas applied to his algorithms. She was a woman of substance, and in the sterile landscape of his successful life, she offered a refreshing sense of order and clarity. Sophia had seen the subtle shadows in Lucas's eyes, the fleeting moments of distant introspection. She never pressed, never pried. Instead, she offered a steady, unwavering presence. She listened to his business woes with a keen legal mind and an empathetic ear. She understood the weight of his responsibilities, the relentless demands on his time. When Lucas felt the familiar ache of loneliness, Sophia was there, not with grand gestures, but with quiet companionship. A shared meal in comfortable silence, a thoughtful book recommendation, a quick, reassuring glance across a crowded boardroom. She was a port in his storm, a steady light guiding him through the sometimes turbulent waters of his life. Their relationship evolved organically, like a slow-blooming flower. It wasn't the fiery, instantaneous spark he'd shared with Ilara. It was a warm, comforting glow that grew stronger with time. He respected her, admired her, and found a deep, quiet comfort in her presence. She didn't demand to fill the void, but gently, patiently, carved out her own space in his life. He began to see a future with her, a future built on mutual respect, shared ambition, and a calm, stable affection. It wasn't the passionate tempest he'd once known, but it was a solid, dependable harbor. One crisp autumn evening, under a canopy of twinkling city lights, Lucas found himself standing with Sophia on the balcony of his penthouse. The city stretched out before them, a dazzling mosaic of human endeavor. He turned to her, her profile etched against the vibrant backdrop, and felt a surge of emotion. Not the breathless, aching desire he'd felt for Ilara, but a profound sense of gratitude and a quiet, resolute love. "Sophia," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "You've brought so much stability, so much light into my life. I want to build a future with you." He reached into his pocket, his hand trembling slightly, and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a single, perfectly cut diamond shimmered, catching the city lights like a trapped star. It was beautiful, flawless, and undeniably brilliant, much like Sophia herself. Her eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and profound tenderness reflecting in their depths. A soft gasp escaped her lips as he knelt before her, the cold night air suddenly feeling warm against his skin. "Sophia Beaumont," he said, his voice imbued with a newfound certainty. "Will you marry me?" For a moment silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant hum of the city. Then a radiant smile bloomed on Sophia's face, illuminating the night. "Oh, Lucas," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes. 1,000 times. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, its cold weight a tangible symbol of his commitment. She pulled him into a warm embrace, her arms circling his neck, her touch a comforting anchor. In that moment, Lucas felt a profound sense of peace. He was making a choice, a conscious decision to embrace the present, to build a future with the woman who stood beside him, who had patiently, lovingly, helped him piece himself back together. The ghost of Alara, for a fleeting instant, seemed to retreat further into the shadows, a distant memory almost drowned out by the bright promise of Sophia's love. The wedding planning began almost immediately, a whirlwind of designers, caterers, and florists. Invitations, embossed with elegant gold lettering, were sent out to an extensive guest list. Lucas felt a surge of excitement, a genuine anticipation he hadn't known in years. He was finally moving forward, stepping into a new chapter, truly believing that the past was finally laid to rest. The diamond on Sophia's finger was a sparkling testament to his new beginning, a bright, unwavering light against the lingering shadows. The grand ballroom of the Beaumont estate shimmered under the opulent glow of crystal chandeliers. It was a symphony of soft laughter, clinking champagne flutes, and the murmur of polite conversation. Every detail, from the cascades of white roses to the string quartet's melodic strains, spoke of Sophia's impeccable taste and Lucas's formidable success. He stood beside Sophia, a vision in her ivory lace gown, her hand resting gracefully in the crook of his arm. Their smiles were radiant, a testament to their carefully built happiness. He felt a profound sense of rightness, a quiet satisfaction that transcended the superficial glamour of the event. This was his future, solid and gleaming, a beacon against the fading shadows of his past. "Lucas, darling, everything is simply perfect," Sophia whispered, her amber eyes sparkling up at him. Her joy was infectious, a warm current that settled deep within him. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise. This was it, the culmination of a journey, the beginning of a new one. The anonymous email, the blurry photo, the phantom limb of Alara's memory, they all felt like distant echoes from a forgotten dream. The master of ceremonies, a distinguished family friend of the Beaumonts, stepped forward, his voice booming genially across the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, we have gathered tonight to celebrate the union of two remarkable individuals, Lucas Thorne and Sophia Beaumont." A ripple of applause, enthusiastic and genuine, swept through the room. Lucas felt Sophia's hand tighten in his, a small tremor of excitement. He looked at her, his heart swelling with a quiet, certain affection. This was the woman who had stood by him, who had seen his scars and chosen to love him regardless. Just as the MC raised his glass for the first toast, a hush fell over the room. It started subtly, a ripple of surprised murmurs near the grand oak doors. Heads began to turn, whispers spreading like wildfire. Lucas, initially dismissing it as a momentary disruption, felt an inexplicable prickle on the back of his neck. He turned, his gaze instinctively drawn to the entrance, a flicker of irritation, then confusion, crossing his face, and then his world splintered. Standing framed in the doorway, bathed in the soft golden light filtering in from the garden, was a figure that time had both sculpted and softened. Her hair, the same rich mahogany he remembered, now flowed past her shoulders, imbued with a lustrous sheen. Her eyes, those unmistakable emerald pools, held a depth of emotion that, simultaneously, drew him in and pushed him away. She wore a simple dark dress that clung to her slender frame, a stark contrast to the opulent finery of the guests. She was thinner, perhaps, with an ethereal fragility that hinted at battles fought far from the world's gaze. But it was undeniably her, Ilara. The name tore through his mind like a lightning bolt, shaking the very foundations of his carefully constructed reality. His breath hitched in his throat, a sharp, painful gasp. The clinking of glasses, the soft music, the hum of conversation, all faded into a deafening silence. The ballroom, once a tableau of joyous celebration, transformed into a shattered mirror reflecting only his shock. Sophia, sensing his sudden rigidity, followed his gaze. Her face, moments ago alight with happiness, drained of color, becoming ashen and still. Her hand, which had rested so securely in his, slowly, almost imperceptibly, slipped away. Ilara's gaze, steady and unwavering, locked onto Lucas's. It was a look that held volumes, years of unspoken pain, of desperate longing, of a love that refused to be extinguished. There was no accusation, no anger, only a profound, heartbreaking vulnerability. She didn't speak, didn't move. She simply stood there, a living ghost, a living question mark, challenging the very air he breathed. A collective gasp swept through the guests. Whispers erupted, louder this time, tinged with curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. Who is that? Isn't that? Oh my God, look at Lucas's face. The once harmonious atmosphere curdled into a palpable tension, thick and suffocating. The air crackled with unspoken histories, with secrets suddenly brought into the blinding light. Lucas felt 1,000 emotions barrage him at once. Disbelief, a surge of overwhelming nostalgia, a jolt of anger at her sudden, unannounced appearance, and a profound, bone-deep ache of recognition. This wasn't a dream, not a fleeting hallucination. She was real, and her presence, like a rogue wave, threatened to capsize his entire world. "Lucas?" Sophia's voice was a fragile whisper, barely audible above the rising hum of the crowd. Her, eyes wide and bewildered, darted between him and Ilara, a silent plea for understanding. She had built her future on the solid ground of his commitment, and now the earth beneath her feet was crumbling. The diamond on her finger, once a symbol of eternal promise, seemed to mock her, catching the light with a cold, unforgiving gleam. Lucas took an involuntary step forward, as if drawn by an invisible current, then stopped, rooted to the spot. His mind raced, a frantic kaleidoscope of memories. Ilara's soft laughter, her encouraging words, the feeling of her hand in his, the devastating silence after she vanished. And then, the long, arduous journey of rebuilding, the quiet comfort of Sophia's presence, the decision to move forward, to choose a new path. Ilara finally broke the silence, her voice soft, almost a breath, yet it cut through the room like a sharp knife. "Lucas," she said, her emerald eyes still fixed on his, I had to come." The raw emotion in her voice, barely controlled, resonated through the stunned silence. It was a voice he hadn't heard in so long, yet instantly recognizable. A melody from a forgotten song. He felt a jolt as if a part of his own soul, long dormant, had suddenly awakened. The sheer audacity of her appearance, the timing, the public spectacle. It was an act of both desperation and courage. Sophia, visibly, trembling, tightened her grip on Lucas's arm, her nails digging slightly into his sleeve. Her eyes, now filled with a mixture of confusion and burgeoning fear, pleaded with him. "Lucas, what is happening?" Her voice, usually so steady and composed, cracked under the immense pressure. She was not just a fiancée. She was a woman whose deeply held trust was being tested, whose future hung precariously in the balance. The air in the ballroom thickened, heavy with unspoken questions and impending confrontation. The guests, now a silent, gaping audience, watched the unfolding drama with morbid fascination. The elegant setting, moments ago a symbol of joy, now felt like a theatrical stage for a tragic play. Lucas stood at the epicenter, caught between two worlds. Two loves, two futures. The past, represented by Ilara, stood before him, alive and breathtakingly real. The present, embodied by Sophia, clutched his arm, a tangible reminder of his commitment. He was a man suspended in time, caught between a haunting echo and a dazzling promise, forced to confront the impossible choice that had just been thrust upon him. The carefully constructed facade of his new life had shattered, revealing the raw, vulnerable heart of a man who had loved and lost, and now found his loss staring back at him. The silence that fell after Ilara's soft declaration, "Lucas, I had to come," was heavier than any roar. It was a silence filled with shattered dreams, unspoken accusations, and the raw ache of a past refusing to stay buried. Lucas's gaze flickered between Ilara, standing like a living ghost in the doorway, and Sophia, whose hand still clutched his arm, her face a mask of bewildered pain. The grand ballroom, moments ago a symphony of celebration, had transformed into a courtroom, with Lucas as the defendant and his heart as the jury. He managed to pull Sophia gently aside, away from the immediate glare of curious eyes, into a small, ornate alcove. "Sophia," he said, his voice strained, I don't understand this any more than you do. We need to talk to her." Sophia's eyes, usually pools of serene confidence, were now clouded with a storm of confusion and hurt. "Talk? Lucas, who is she? Why is she here now, of all times?" Her voice was a fragile whisper, a stark contrast to the strength he usually associated with her. The diamond on her finger seemed to pulse, a mocking reminder of the future they had just pledged. Before Lucas could respond, Ilara, with a newfound resolve, walked towards them. Her steps were deliberate, each one echoing in the cavernous silence. She stopped a few feet away, her emerald eyes still fixed on Lucas, now holding a desperate plea for understanding. "Lucas," she began, her voice steadying, "I know this isn't how you envisioned this day. I know it's a shock, but I couldn't let you walk into this without knowing the truth." She cast a quick, empathetic glance at Sophia, a silent apology in her eyes. "This isn't about breaking anything. It's about explaining." Lucas felt a strange pull, an almost magnetic force drawing him to her story. "The truth?" he echoed, his voice laced with years of unanswered questions. "Ilara, where have you been?" And then, in the hushed intimacy of the alcove, Ilara began to weave her story. She spoke of the accident, not just the physical impact, but the terrifying diagnosis that followed. Her voice trembled as she recounted the shock of learning she had a rare, aggressive form of bone marrow cancer, exacerbated by the trauma. She described the immediate, clandestine whisking away by agents of her estranged relative, Dr. Eris Thorne. Lucas listened, his mind racing, connecting the dots to the anonymous email and the old medical article. "He was my mother's distant cousin," Ilara explained, her voice a low murmur. "A brilliant but unconventional geneticist. He'd been working on an experimental treatment for years, a last resort for cases like mine. He insisted on absolute secrecy, saying any public knowledge would jeopardize the entire program, that the ethical oversight would shut him down." She described the grueling, isolating months of treatment, the constant pain, the psychological toll of being cut off from the world. "They took my phone, Lucas. They monitored all my communications. I tried, believe me, I tried to reach you, but they argued it was for my own good, to ensure the fragile success of the treatment. Every time I saw your name in the news, saw how you were building your empire, my heart ached with pride, and with a crushing sense of despair. How could I, a ghost of a past, a sick woman, reappear and burden the magnificent life you were creating?" Her voice broke, a raw, poignant crack that resonated deeply. "I truly believed I was doing what was best for you. I thought if I just disappeared, you could move on, grieve, and find happiness without the weight of my illness." Tears welled in her emerald eyes, shimmering like fragmented stars. "I was selfish in my silence, Lucas. I chose what I thought was your peace over my own desperate longing." Lucas felt a tidal wave of conflicting emotions, relief that she was alive, a profound sorrow for her suffering, and a burning resentment for her choice. "You thought that was best for me, Alara?" he asked, his voice a low growl, laced with years of suppressed pain. 5 years of not knowing, of believing you were gone, of trying to outrun the ghost of you? That was peace! The contrast between his pain and her intention was a gaping chasm, impossible to bridge with a single explanation. Sophia, who had listened in stunned silence, finally spoke, her voice surprisingly gentle, despite the tremor in her hands. "Ilara," she began, her gaze unwavering, "I can't imagine the pain you've been through. But to disappear completely? To leave no trace? It's a profound act of concealment." There was no anger in her tone, only a quiet, resolute questioning. Sophia, the lawyer, understood the gravity of concealment, the weight of a truth withheld. Ilara nodded, her shoulders slumping. "I know. And for that, Sophia, Lucas, I am truly sorry. I live with that regret every single day. The weight of their shared past, a forgotten burden, suddenly pressed down on all three of them. Lucas looked at Alara, truly seeing her for the first time in years, not just the idealized memory, but a woman scarred by invisible battles, fragile yet fiercely resilient. He saw the genuine remorse in her eyes, the palpable pain of her confession. And then he looked at Sophia, her face pale but composed, her loyalty and strength shining through her shock. He was caught between a love that had defied time and a love that had healed his wounds. The next few days were a blur of hushed conversations, late-night phone calls, and agonizing introspection. The wedding was inevitably postponed indefinitely. The guests, understanding the gravity of the situation, dispersed, leaving behind a profound silence that echoed with unspoken questions. Lucas found himself constantly pulled in two directions. With Alara, he felt the familiar pull of a past that still held a potent, almost magical allure. Her presence stirred emotions he thought long dead, a longing for the carefree days when their future seemed boundless. They spent hours talking, filling in the blanks of 5 lost years, each revelation a raw nerve exposed. She spoke of the harrowing treatments, the isolation, the constant fear of relapse, and the quiet joy of her recovery. Yet, when he was with Sophia, he felt the quiet comfort of stability, the undeniable strength of a partnership built on mutual respect and shared present. She never demanded, never pressured him to choose. Instead, she offered him space, her quiet presence a steady anchor in his turbulent sea of emotions. "Lucas," she had said, her voice soft but firm, "I love you, but I need you to be sure, not just for me, but for yourself, and for her." Her grace in the face of such a devastating intrusion was a testament to her character, a quiet brilliance that shone even brighter in the chaos. The turning point came not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet, moonlit conversation with Alara. They sat in the very park where they used to dream of their future, the chill autumn air mirroring the cold certainty that was slowly settling in Lucas's heart. "Alara," Lucas began, his voice heavy, "I love you, I truly do. A part of me always will. The girl I loved, the future we planned, it's etched into my soul." He paused, his gaze drifting to the distant city lights. "But so much has changed. We've both changed. You had to fight a battle I couldn't even imagine. I built a life, a company, a future. Without you. And Sophia, she was there. She helped me pick up the pieces, piece by agonizing piece." Ilara listened, her eyes glistening, but her expression was one of quiet understanding. "I know, Lucas," she whispered, her voice tinged with a familiar melancholy. "I knew this might happen. When I chose to disappear, I knew I was gambling with our future. I had to see you, to tell you, to release that secret." "Your secret," Lucas continued, his voice softer. "While born of unthinkable circumstances, still left me in a void that Sophia, unknowingly, filled. She became my present, my future. And while the past, our past, is beautiful and painful, I can't dismantle my entire world for a ghost, however real. He looked at her, his heart aching with the truth of his words. I can't go back, Ilara. Not to that version of us. A single tear traced a path down Ilara's cheek, but she nodded. I understand. I truly do. Perhaps the greatest act of love sometimes is letting go. She reached out, her hand hovering for a moment, then gently touched his arm. Just know, Lucas, that you were the most beautiful chapter of my life, and I carry you in my heart, always. The next morning, Lucas spoke with Sophia. He laid bare his soul, his lingering affection for Ilara, and his profound gratitude and love for Sophia. I chose you, Sophia, he said, his voice firm, because you are here, you are real, you are the woman I want to build my future with. But I needed to be honest, completely honest, about the depth of what I felt and still feel for Ilara. And I need to know if you can forgive me for the turmoil, for the doubt this has caused. Sophia, her amber eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and profound understanding, took his hand. Lucas, she said, her voice steady, love isn't always a straight line. It's messy, it's complicated, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. But I believe in us. I believe in the future we're building. And if we can navigate this earthquake, then I know we can navigate anything. She smiled, a faint, weary smile that reached her eyes. We'll postpone the wedding a little longer. For us, to heal, to understand, to solidify our foundation. But I'm not going anywhere. Ilara, after a heartfelt farewell, chose to leave the city. She visited her old studio, gathered a few cherished belongings, and left a small, unfinished painting on the easel. A vibrant landscape, full of light and promise. She embarked on a new journey, seeking solace and purpose in art therapy, helping others who had faced similar battles. Her secret was no longer a burden. It was a testament to her resilience, a catalyst for a new beginning. She knew her love for Lucas would always remain, a tender ache. But it was no longer a chain. She was finally free to paint her own future, in colors vibrant and true. 6 months later, Lucas and Sophia exchanged vows in a much smaller, more intimate ceremony, surrounded by their closest loved ones. There were no grand chandeliers, no hundreds of guests, but the love that filled the room was palpable, profound, and deeply earned. Lucas looked at Sophia, her eyes shining with tears of joy, and knew he had made the right choice. Their love wasn't a sudden explosion, but a quiet, enduring flame tempered by trial and forged in understanding. He held her hand, the scar on his ribs a distant echo, replaced by the warmth of her touch, a promise of a future built on honesty, forgiveness, and the unveiled truth. Reflection on the unveiled secret. Dear listeners, as our story of Lucas, Ilara, and Sophia concludes, we hope it leaves you with a profound sense of reflection. The Unveiled Secret explores the intricate tapestry of love, loss, and the choices we make. It reminds us that truth, however painful, eventually finds its way to light, and that forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others, is a powerful balm. This tale highlights the immense courage it takes to confront a haunting past, the resilience required to rebuild a shattered life, and the enduring strength found in honest connection. Sometimes love isn't about holding on, but about knowing when to let go, allowing both ourselves and others the freedom to find happiness. What lessons did you take away from their journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that touch the heart. Thank you for listening.